Hey, Marianne, Aunt Marianne. Yes, I'm here to talk to you about your life throughout the decades, right? I know that you were born in 1955, the first
Hmm.
child to Keith and Sarah,
Yes.
and then your birth was followed by Andy and Janie, as well as John later on. So, can you tell me a bit about growing up the late 50s and during the 60s in Northern Virginia?
Yeah. Well, and we should probably say the date
Yeah.
today, which I don't know, so you'll have to
Today
provide it.
is it's April 22nd, 2026.
And we're sitting in the dining room of my house
Yeah,
in Durham, North
yeah,
Carolina,
in Monmouth Avenue.
Monmouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been looking forward to this. This is really exciting
Mm-hmm.
because although I've conducted a lot of interviews, I've not really been the the subject
Yeah.
of interviews.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you doing this and working on the McDonald and Rousselot
Mm-hmm.
history.
My
Um,
pleasure.
yeah. So as I was just saying that I I was thinking about what you had said, about sort of different eras of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought I would start at something that I think had a big impression on me, which was when we first. I have some memories from before this, but my most vivid memories are of when we moved to Boundbrook Lane, which was a huge suburban development with big yards and big houses, and my dad and mother found one that they liked, and it was brand new. So this was just the Alexandria and the Washington area hadn't grown as much as it has now. And it was really the beginning of that. It was probably 1961, 62, 63, right around there. We'd been living in Vienna, Virginia, and then bought this, huge house.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen it?
I don't think so.
Oh, next time you're around, we should go look at it. I think you'd be amazed.
I've seen the Lake Barcroft house.
Yeah, this was very different. It wasn't as Tony.
Okay.
Lake Barcroft was really, had a bunch of intellectuals. That's
Yeah.
and at uh, Riverside,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it was more colonels from the army
Ah.
because of the Pentagon and other places. Oh, I forgot. Oh, actually, I should take that. Hey, Pam. Oh, that's all right. I just wanted to let you know that my nephew is still here, and so I'm going to take this day off. And okay, and I'm going to be meeting with Kristen on Friday in the office, but I don't, and I'll probably come in tomorrow. I'm not sure. Okay, great. Have a good day. Bye bye. Why did that ring?
I don't. I think it's because I don't know.
So let me just go put it in my bedroom because I don't want to
Okay.
interrupt. You know.
Yeah.
I'm putting it under the covers.
Okay.
So you might have to remind me where it is.
Okay.
What I'm saying, God damn it, where did I put that? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing.
Yeah.
So we went to Riverside Estates,
Mm-hmm.
and which was all being built, and it was really very exciting. And I think my dad and my mother thought they were huge houses, 4 bedrooms upstairs, and
Wow.
yeah, they were really big, sort of classic American oomph. And not all the houses were that big, but we definitely had one of the larger ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the best part was that it was the best part from my perspective was that things were just being built. So there was all this forest, and then a Little Hunting Creek, which was a tributary of the Potomac, and so it was just a great way to there were all these places to run around and explore, and we had such freedom. I mean, it was me, and then two doors down was Bob King, And he was just a wonderful guy, and his mother and my mother were good friends. And so we just raced around, the two of us, and sometimes Andy and Janie, but mostly Bob King and me. And we would just go all over. We'd go down to Little Honey Creek. We'd play in the mud. We'd play, we'd just do explore and go everywhere. And I really, it was amazingly safe. I don't know if I'd let my kids these days, but it was, it hadn't been built up yet, so there weren't that many people around. And we would just, see all these different little animals. We'd wade into the water and catch, frogs. And I mean, just sort of this classic
Yeah.
place to explore. And we did have just the most wonderful time. And we would go out and stay out for hours and hours. And of course, there were no phones that anybody could call us from. My mother, we knew we had to be home, way before dark. And plus, we would get so hungry. But I do just think that exploring all of that natural world, and also there was some pollution because they were just at that point, dumping. I'm sure there weren't enough. There probably weren't enough things built yet to do anything but just dump all these things into Little Honey Creek and into the Potomac. So, toilets, all sorts of stuff, bad stuff that they probably should have been fined for and not be allowed to build. But you could really smell it. So anyway, we would spend hours and hours down there, and it was just a quick walk. It was a 15-minute walk, and just all the different trees, and I loved it, and that we felt, it was like really our place. And it was really fun, and we'd see fish, and there weren't anything like deer; they had been chased off. But you'd see, lots of squirrels, and occasionally other, like a possum or two, and things like that. And I've always loved to be out in the woods, and I think I trace it back partly to that. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it was really fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing we would do is just race around within our neighborhood. And it was a completely pro-child neighborhood because everybody had, at least 3 children. And many of them were Catholic, which I had never, they were in church all the time instead of being able to play with us. And so I was Episcopalian, and we went to church, but, they were always being toted off to church for different things. And so that was my first experience with people who had, slightly different, still Christian, obviously, but slightly different ways of worship. And so, so that was another, thing that was different that I hadn't run into before. But they were mostly really, really, nice people, and colonels at that point must have made really good money because these were big, nice houses, and then they would all go into the Pentagon for their work.
Yeah, there must have been so many kids around.
Oh,
Where this is really peak baby boom.
Oh,
it's post World War II.
Absolutely.
The suburbs are being built, right?
Yes.
Like 20, 30 years ago, there were suburbs, but they weren't as big. But post baby boom, they grow a lot, and there are lots of children being born in the late 40s and in all of the 50s, and you were smack in the middle of that.
Right. It's so true, and everybody had 3 kids, and some had 7.
Yeah.
There were all these Catholics who were like, 7 children? I mean, they were just, it was unbelievable to me that you would have 7 children in your house. Yeah. It was wild. And there were several people we'd go to their house, and many of them were very, very different from us. One of them, I'd never seen this before ever, but there were some kids down the street that we would go play with. Well, after dinner, they couldn't come out and play. They had to do all the cleanup of everything. It was a big family. And so we would have to wait for them to finish. And their parents would all sit. They were like their parents, maybe their grandparents lived in the house with them too. and they would sit in the living room and all of them smoke cigarettes. I was shocked. I mean, my grandmother smoked, but they would just sit there. You know, it was like every single night after dinner, and I just thought, what on earth? You know, they would just be. It was very, very different, and I realized now it must have been they were probably really city people. You know, who'd moved down to this new place. I don't know. I just was fairly, really just amazed at how different they were.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, my grandmother smoked, but it was the whole house. You know, the mother, the father, the aunts and uncles were all there, and I just thought that was just really a very unusual way. And it would be every night after dinner they would sit and do that, which just wasn't the way that we did things.
Did these families come from the Northeast?
Yes.
Like from New York,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Philly?
Just different places. I'm not sure they were all city people, but that's the impression that I got. And they were Catholic, and there weren't very many Catholics in the South.
Yeah. Whereas in your side of the family was much more country, right? Where Grandpa, or like Keith, Ken, and Tom were born in Kansas.
Yeah.
You know, lived in Illinois.
But they were born in Topeka. They were city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Sarah and her parents are from Martinsburg, West
Yep.
Virginia. So
Yep.
it's, again, very they're not from Philadelphia.
No.
They're not from New York City.
Right. Yeah. Very different.
What and so then what was it like? So this was like the end of elementary school.
No, this was really when I was like 6, 7,
Okay,
8.
so the start of elementary school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know, I can remember getting on the bus to go to school, and I went to Woodley Hills Elementary, and it was a nice little. Things were growing so quickly there that they were just everything was overcrowded. It was a huge. Washington was really boomtown then. This was really the beginning of the larger federal workforce, and so that made a big difference. And I guess my parents were concerned that the schools weren't very good because all the classes were completely, they hadn't built enough schools for all these kids. And I knew how to read and stuff, but they were really concerned. So they popped me and I guess Andy and Janie into St. Agnes, which was a private school. I wasn't crazy about St. Agnes at all.
I hear from Jeanette's memoir that you decided to go to Jeb Stewart in like junior, sophomore year of high school.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was no later than my sophomore year. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, St. Agnes definitely had better teachers, smaller classes, and was very. It was a good school. It's still there, but for me, it was difficult because all of the other girls there were from a certain, how to say this, their mothers were all prominent. Their mothers were more like my grandmother, and they had special. They went to all these different. I don't know. It was a different socioeconomic level.
You felt like you belonged to a lower social economic class.
In some way, although nobody treated me that way, but I did feel like, oh, this is not really. These are not my people,
Yeah.
And they were all doing fancy things. They were going to dance classes. When they were really young, and they weren't running around outside like I was. And I didn't really like St. Agnes at all. I was a voracious reader, but I wasn't keen on math or a lot of the other stuff. But I did all right. But it was a big jump from the public school where I had, I think at one point, 35 people in a class, with one teacher. And I can remember being in the public school before I went to St. Agnes, and we'd have these reading circles. Well, I would just sit there and read the book, and then when it was my turn to read the sentence, I'd have no idea where we were, and so they thought I couldn't read. It's like, no. I can read. I just got bored, and so it was really a great example of a place that was growing too quickly. The schools couldn't handle it. The teachers weren't enabled, and the classes were too big. And so that's how my dad ended up putting us into St. Agnes, which had its own problems, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
But definitely the instruction was better. And it was it was a long drive. It was like 25 minutes or so every morning and every evening. And then one of the things that I did get to do that I really liked at St. Agnes is they had art classes. Mm-hmm. And so my dad paid for me to go to art classes on like every Thursday. And I loved it. We did oil paintings, and I just, and drawing, and learned all sorts of stuff. And I really liked that so much. What I didn't like is that my dad was supposed to pick me up on the way home, and he forgot. So I'd be there. Here's this, I would be waiting on the front steps, and it would get darker and darker and darker, and they'd lock up they'd say, "Oh dear, is someone coming for you?" And I'd say, "Oh yeah." I mean, I knew eventually I'd probably get home. I wouldn't have to, but he would forget me so frequently because he was used to just going straight home, and this was like one time a week, Thursdays or something, that I would. And so I remember being left there so often and just feeling like, gosh, because I still have homework to do. But after they shut out, I couldn't wait inside, which they shut at, 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And so it's like I'd have to go home and do my homework, which was really difficult, to get done. I'd have to turn it in anyway. And my poor mother would say, he'd come in, hi, Sarah. Oh, you forgot Marianne again? So you'd have to turn around, go all the way back, and pick me up and take me. And I'd be, I'd be sitting out there sometimes it was cold,
Yeah.
I mean, I knew they were going to come get me eventually, but I can remember feeling like, ooh, I have all this homework to do. How am I going to do this,
and Andy and Jane were at another school at the time. I assume you were in middle school and they were in elementary school?
No,
probably?
I was still in elementary school,
okay.
and I don't think they went to St. Agnes quite. Maybe they did. I don't remember.
Okay.
But they weren't waiting with me. So maybe they got rides home because it was the days that I stayed after school, actually, for art classes.
You had an after-school program. Yeah. They would use the bus to go home with,
Well, there was no bus.
Normal time. Okay.
There was no. That was the other big thing, is it was all mothers who didn't work, right? And they all toted their kids. That's so they would drive in, and drop them off, and drive in, and then pick them up at the end of the day. And it was a whole different world of women staying home. I don't think I knew a single parent, a single mother who worked outside the home that I was aware of. Which, I mean, what a huge change.
I mean, I think it's also a sign of social class.
Oh, yeah.
Where the women did not have to work.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, it was an expensive school.
Mm-hmm.
And so the father had to be making some good money. And the women did all sorts of other things, but not for pay.
Yeah.
They were busy. But, that was, and for me, when I would go over to other people's houses, it was just like very different. They lived in old houses in Old Town Alexandria, which was a whole different world. They didn't live in the suburbs. Anyway.
What was it like visiting Old Town when you were a kid?
Well, I think when I was in about 6th and 7th grade, I met someone who became a very close friend of mine, Ginny Morton, and she was just wonderful and very bright, and we became just fast friends. It was Morton and then McDonald. McDonald, right? I was sat right in front of her. So on the first day of school, when I was it must have been 6th grade or 7th grade, and we just clicked, and we thought the same things were funny. We thought that all the girls who dressed up all the time and talked about boys were ridiculous. We would make fun of them, and we just became really, really tight and remained tight through her entire life. She died. I'm still in touch with her husband. I mean, it was a long, long.
Yeah, she went to your wedding, right?
Yeah.
I think Jeanette said
Yeah.
that in the memoir.
Yeah.
She was
She was one of my bridesmaids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With Jane.
And we were just as and she was very funny. And speaking of alcoholism, her mother ran a bookstore, and they lived off of this bookstore, which was like not a lot of money. The father was a professional alcoholic, as far as I could tell, and that's what Ginny said, and he was from an old Southern family. And he would say, "Oh, hello there, Marianne." He was just always very, gentlemanly and all this. But, he would come down at like noon, when I was spending a weekend there. And so it was quite a different household than mine. And they lived in this, not in Old Town, but in a faux Old Town area that wasn't as expensive, sort of on the edge. And and they knew, I guess her mother had a lot of, she was just a wonderful, gentle person, and funny as she could be, and knew all these songs. But she was, we could just run around Alexandria. So we were in 7th and 8th grade then. And it was pretty safe.
And the schools were not segregated, were they?
There was desegregation happening,
But
but not at St. Agnes Episcopal School for girls.
What about Jeb Stuart High School?
By the time I got to Jeb Stuart, it was completely desegregated.
And that was in the
71.
early 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, it was definitely.
Wow. So you went from a
Lily White,
informally segregated private school.
Yeah.
To a desegregated public school, which I think
was wild.
Matches like your personality more.
Yes, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had so much more in common. I mean, I would just all loved, when I got to public school, I was like, oh my God, this is so much more fun. These people were just from all over, and they were so, they lived in different countries, and the ones who'd lived here, they're just from all different backgrounds, and I just thought they were all really interesting and really fun. And, I was on all these sports teams, believe it or not.
What sports did you do?
Field hockey.
Yeah.
And, gosh, what else? They didn't have soccer for women.
Yeah.
That was way before that. But so field hockey is sort of the equivalent, but with a weapon,
Yeah.
And so we did that, and we did. I guess I also did field and track, and I really liked those things. So it was fun in that way, but it was very stuffy. And they were really trying to preserve the Old South.
Yeah.
Very much so. And they, wanted you to stand up when any teacher came in, really old style. And then there were...
Well, I'm sure for their generation it seemed normal.
Oh, absolutely. They'd been that way forever.
I'm sure that's what Jeanette must have been raised with when she
in
was
a public school
at the University of Kansas in the 1920s, and in public school in the 1910s.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you're right. So that was, that was a big change. We didn't do that in public school when I was in it. So that was, it was a very different world for me. And it was also a world that was beginning, the girls were turning into young women.
Yeah.
And so they were very conscious of, or their parents were very conscious of, going to the right this and the right that.
Like the right what?
Well, we used to go to these dances. It was like pre-dancing. So all the parents would take and drop them off. They teach us to dance. It was called Junior Assembly. I can't believe I did this. my grandmother definitely wanted me to go because there were such nice people there. Nice was the term she would always use. No, they're very nice people. So you definitely. Oh, when I know her grandmother, I mean, it was.
Which means like a suitor that your grandmother would have approved of.
Yes, someone who a nice family meant everything it sounds like. They were married, they weren't divorced, they were active in the right things, they had enough money, they drove nice cars. All of check, all the right things. And so she was thrilled that, Ginny's family was not a nice, what she would say a nice family. They came from, Ginny used to just tell me all these stories, but they came from a very prominent Southern family, big deal family. But her father had been such a disaster that he sort of lost his place in the family. But and her mother was like the belle of the ball, had all these pictures. And she was just beautiful and lovely. Yeah. But they had this tiny little house. It was much smaller than our house. And when your husband is a alcoholic, he doesn't make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like zero. He drinks it up. And so the world at Ginny Morton's house was just completely and utterly different from my world. I don't know if you had that experience when you were growing up, but it was just another world. And I thought, wow. And and Mrs. Morton was one of the first women I knew who worked. She ran this bookstore in downtown Alexandria, in Old Town, Alexandria, and she was there every single day. So they were living on that. At the same time, Ginny had inherited, this full silver set and, all these accoutrements of a much different socioeconomic level. And she had this fabulous furniture that, the leftovers from relatives who had died or whatever, but very nice things. So I guess I always felt like I had I knew so many different people that I had a real experience of figuring out how were their societal places all different, and how did they get along, and all of these things. Because St. Agnes was a very, it was like, the nice girls went to St. Agnes, and you went you dated boys from St. Stephen's when you were old enough, a junior in high school or whatever. So there was all this stuff that I didn't care a whit about that a lot of the other girls, not me and Ginny, but a lot of the other girls would just talk about.
Oh, Ginny Morton was at St. Agnes as well?
Yeah, that's we saved each other because we made fun of all the stuff that was there.
And so what was it like being a high schooler at the Keith McDonald house in the late 60s and early 70s with Andy and Janie and Little John?
Yeah, Little John was so sweet and cute. He really was. He lived with my Aunt Alva for years. My dad really wanted him to come back, but he would spend summers down there.
Yeah, I saw in Jeanette's memoir that he spent like the first year or two of his life in Atlanta
with Aunt Alva.
With Alva, and that they wanted to adopt John, but that Keith wanted John to come back.
And I later figured out, I spent a lot of time down there too, and they were racists. Incredible racists. My father was absolutely the least racist person I had ever. He was just like, no, everybody's the same. You're as polite to black people as you are to any. You could see it in him, and he lived that. He worked at the Pentagon. Not the Pentagon, but he worked for the government, and there were all sorts of people from different places, and he just found them so much more interesting than the regular white folks. So I think we sometimes don't appreciate how interested my dad was in different people, and how much he was, liked talking and making friends in that way. And I remember meeting some of his friends at, at dinners and things like that, and I always thought they were, no wonder he liked talking to them. They were interesting from different places and had been through all sorts of stuff. Maybe they had left Russia. I mean, there was just an incredible number of folks working for the government that my dad befriended. Anyway, I can't remember how I got onto that, but
I was asking you about growing up in Grandpa's in Keith's household.
yeah.
As a high schooler, right? But before going to college.
Well, that's boy, is that a long?
Yeah.
That's a long story. My grandma and my baba, mother's mother, who was older than my grandmother. Yeah, I think grandma was born in 1902. Is that right?
Jeanette, yeah.
And my baba was born in 1898.
Wow.
In this, yeah, it was the capital of the of the county, but it was still just little old Martinsburg. And in fact, the last time I was in Martinsburg, the high school where my mother went was still the public high school. And she must have graduated in 1949. I mean 48. I mean, I think which just sort of says something about about how much about the amount of money for schools and all sorts of stuff like that. I don't, Anyway, sorry, forgot my thought there, but
that's fine. It was about life as a high schooler in
yeah.
Grandpa's household.
Well, so like I was saying, Grandma would come out and stay and make dinner for us and do all that, and then and Baba would come down and stay. But Baba was really getting old, and she was getting tired, and she had to drive almost 2 hours from Martinsburg to get there. Yeah, so it was a really sort of a big deal. It wasn't a busy road that she had to take, but it was no fun. And so for my grandmother, my dad would just go pick her up because she was so close by and bring her, and she didn't drive. But Baba really couldn't come down as often. And I was getting older, and so it fell on to me to be the one who was doing the grocery shopping, which Janie would come along with me sometimes, but she was like 12.
Yeah.
I mean, she would help, but and she was a good sport about it, but she was not. She would much rather have been reading a book in her room, and so she was not a real helper to me most of the time. Sometimes she would be, and who could blame her? I mean, I blamed her at the time a bit because I wanted more help, but so when we moved from out in the suburbs to Lake Barcroft, and my dad must have gotten a big raise or changed jobs because it was just a whole other world.
Lake Barcroft was a much fancier neighborhood, and you could tell the socioeconomic position of the neighborhood kids' parents was different.
Completely different.
Yeah, and for example, that's where Cindy's father, parents lived.
Exactly.
Who was like a fancy schmancy doctor.
Oh yeah. Oh, and he such a nice man.
Yeah.
Such a nice man. Yeah, and there were Jews there, and I was like, Jews? What are these? And it's like every Jewish person I met, it was like boom, we were just like best friends instantly. So, Cindy Snyder, Margie Jervis. They didn't have Jews out where it was a whole different world, and they were just
switched from colonels to Jews.
Exactly. And I mean, I just can't tell you, but when I met Cindy Snyder, I just thought, oh, she's really interesting and so neat, and she was so artistic and so friendly and so open, and I just, and Margie, they were all like this, and I just thrived. I just thought they were the best, most interesting people I'd ever met in my life. And I guess they were. I mean, in a lot of ways, and I still know them. I talked to Margie, day before yesterday, So it's sort of amazing. We all went to Jeb Stewart, which was a very, how they have these pictures of how many national honor people were at each school. Well, we had like 8 every year, and I knew all of them, and these are the ones who totally aced their SATs or something. If you get and so it was hot stuff. It was really probably one of the best public schools in the whole Northern Virginia area because it was drawing from Lake Barcroft and where people made good money, but they were really smart and had good positions. So they were just.
Jeanette loved that.
Oh, she did. When she would always ask me, what does her father do and things like, which I would be like, I'm not sure. You don't go in.
Yeah.
But she really liked all the different people that I met, and I was so fortunate because I guess I was there for 1 year. We moved over from Boundbrook Lane to Beachway Drive, and I guess I moved in. I guess I switched during Christmas break, so that was a little difficult. But I really liked the teachers. And I just thought, wow, these people have read the same books I have, which was not the same. There weren't as many bookworms at the other school.
What books had you read as a 16?
Oh God, I can't.
What were the hot books for 16-year-old Marianne?
I don't know. I really can't remember, but it was adult books.
Mm-hmm.
Books for not that they had adult themes to them, but I mean books that were complex and that your parents probably or your grandparents probably were reading, or if you had been in the U.S. And I was a bookworm through all of this, as Janie was too. But so the first time I was at Mount Vernon, first time I went from Mount Vernon and then to Jeb Stuart. And for the first semester that I was there, which I came in at Christmas, everybody was kind of all, partnered up and stuff. But I could tell that it was just a whole other, people were so much more sophisticated. So you think, how can teenagers in, a public high school can instantly, you just thought, oh, they're more sophisticated. They had just been more places. They'd lived all around the world, many of them. They were very concerned about paying attention and getting good grades, which was not the Mount Vernon. I mean, there were some people like that, and then I was in American Studies, which I've always loved, and that was where I really made a lot of good friends.
In American Studies in high school?
Yeah, in high school.
Okay.
It was a history and literature, and so you had 2
Mm-hmm.
classes, one after the other. So we would study things that related to history and literature and all that, and it was really I had 2 great teachers, and I just was in hog heaven. I mean, I really liked it, and it was a big class, but people were just smart and said good things, and there were interesting people in there that I got to know, and it was good. I mean, I felt really challenged, and I was reading all this extra stuff. So that's the school part of it was great. And during the second semester that I was there, which would have been the fall of the following year, that was I just met all these people that became my fast friends and lived quite close by too. Margie lived right down the block and things like that.
And so did these high school friends follow you to University of Virginia after high school?
No. The next step was, whether they followed me, was my house, because there were no parents there.
Yeah.
Not that we did anything that was so terrible, but, well, one of my good friends was Charlie Rowan, who was and his brother. Well, there were 3, the Rowan boys. Charlie, Jim, and I can't remember the oldest ones, but we were all friends. And Charlie was really good at piano and ended up making summer work every year. His dad owned a very nice restaurant downtown called the Gangplank It was like the place to be.
Oh, yeah.
And so he and then Charlie would play music there during the summers every night. Well, not every night, 5 nights a week. Friday, Saturday, whatever. And he was really good. We had a baby grand, and so it was a party at my house. Everybody came to my house.
It sounds like your house was.
It was
like the life of the party for like the high school, for the
absolutely
high schoolers in the neighborhood.
It was. It absolutely was, and we were really good. I mean, people would help me. Janie and I would go to the store.
Oh yeah, and so Andy and Janie were also kind of in the party. Well,
and not Andy.
No?
He was really shy, and he just stayed in his room. And I think he decided to stay at St. Stephen's.
And you think that he disliked?
He's shy.
Okay. So
he didn't dislike
the
friends.
Right.
But he was shy, and
okay.
I think he grew in college. He became a little more outgoing, but he really was shy.
And what about Janie?
Oh, and Janie
how
was
just she? Because I know she's 4 years younger than you. Something.
Yeah.
I know she's born in 59.
3.5, yeah.
And I know, and like at that age in high school, 3.5 is.
It's a lot.
It's a large gap.
Yeah.
So how was she during these little get-togethers in your high school experience?
I can't remember when she left St. Agnes and came to public school. I sometimes think that maybe it was after I had left, because I was done with St. Agnes. I mean, it was very, there were some great teachers, but it just wasn't, you were being trained to go to the right colleges, do the right things, and then be the head of the junior league club. And it was like, no.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was hitchhiking to protests downtown.
Yeah.
So it's like, and we were really so aware. We got the Washington Post every day. Everybody read it. It was a lot going on. There was anti-Vietnam War. And we went to every demonstration we could. And my friend Ruthie DeFries, who is brilliant, lived next door to Margie. Margie was much more concerned about safety than Ruthie and I. But we would just go out and hitchhike to downtown, and for these demonstrations. And we'd do it every time there was one. And it was, not so much anti-racism by that time. It was the war. Who was fighting in the war?
Yeah.
It was people who got drafted and couldn't get out of it. So it was a lot of black men.
Yeah. Cindy's husband, David, was born in 1950.
Oh.
I've asked him about, what was it like being a teenager and being in your 20s in this time period. And he said that, like, the two big clouds was the Vietnam War and civil rights.
Absolutely. Civil rights, where I was interesting because there were a few people. There were a couple of areas that were mostly, I guess they were small houses and townhouses, and that were predominantly black. And this was just news to me, because I had not had a friend who was black or anything, because they didn't live in the same places. I mean, it was really very segregated. And so then I go to Jeb Stewart, and there are all these black people, and they're really smart. I mean, one of them sang opera. He was that's a whole other story. But his mother was a teacher and they lived in D.C. and he was just wonderful, and a member of our group, pretty much. He was the only black member of our gang. He was just so talented, but it was just a whole different world. And I remember sitting where I was, and you had you were supposed to sit in the same chairs every time, and I was surrounded on 3 sides by black people, which was like, yes. I mean, I just immediately was like, this is where it's at. I want to be with these folks. They're funny. They say great things. They're just, I mean, I just liked them. And these were really smart, fun people. And they did really well in school, which is why they were in the classes with me. And I just felt so lucky. I mean, those folks, except for the one who was the singer, the opera singer. He sang opera. But it was just amazing how many. These were all upper working class or white collar. Their parents were either white collar or upper working class, and so they were smart, ambitious. Sherry Lutz, that was her name. She was right behind me, and then there were other folks all over, and they were different, and I was just transfixed, and just couldn't understand why anyone could be prejudiced against black people. And I'm just like, what is going on here? These kids are so much fun, and they're funny, and they're smart, and I just always felt like it was just luck. I just felt so lucky to know them. And then we didn't sit together at lunch. There was the black tables and the white tables. I think that's probably changed, maybe not. But in 1972, 71, that's the way it had been. And then there were kids who did hang out with us. And they had they had a real different take on everything, and so when you were talking to them, I didn't know anybody who was black and their parents were upper working class.
Yeah.
And so, they had plenty of the right clothes and all of that, and they were smart. And they were just a lot of fun.
What was it like after high school, going to the University of Virginia? And I see from Jeanette's memoir that you graduated in 1978 from University of Virginia.
Yeah.
And so, what was it like?
73 was when I graduated from high school. Yeah.
So, what were you up to from 1973 to 1978? What were you up to from like approximately like 18 to 23 as a college student at UVA?
Well, I'll say for the summer, I had a job. I can't remember what I did at the end of high school. Oh God, oh God, this is amazing. Maybe it was the year before that. I spent the summer hitchhiking downtown to work with a environmental group. They had no idea how I got there, but I would hitchhike in and out every day, and people would pick me up. I never told my father. I mean, he would have killed me. Yeah. I don't know what he would have done. But I mean, I didn't have a car, yeah. And plus when I got down there was no place to park, but it was on DuPont Circle. So it was a little hike if you are familiar with Washington at all.
Yeah.
But I'd get down there and work all day and then leave at 5. I'd answer phones and then I'd write newsletter things, and the people who were there working, they all lived in Washington, and this was really the beginning of much more radical environmental work. And so one of the things that they did was, and that I went with them when they did this, is we would go and they'd bring me along, and then they would read testimony in different congressional, groups. So there'd be 30 people in the room, and they would stand up and say, okay, this is the problem with inadequate sewage. This is the problem with whatever this was, or pesticide use, and they were really smart. They all had advanced degrees, and just seeing that, I was such a young, let's change the world person anyway. I was like, oh, so this is part of the system.
Yeah.
You go in and educate people and answer all these questions and answer them really well. I mean, these folks, they all had advanced degrees, and they were so kind. I mean, they really made a big impression on me. to see. I mean, I didn't know how it worked. I mean, have you ever been to hearings like that? You know, well, it's fascinating. It was to me, because you have all these, representatives and stuff in there asking questions, or people, maybe they weren't the representatives, they were folks sent, they were the staff. So that was really interesting. That I really learned so much. I guess that was in between, junior year and senior year, maybe, that I was doing that. Yeah, no, high school.
Okay. And also, I read in Jeanette's memoir that you traveled through Central America.
Oh yeah, that was later.
With 3 friends.
Yeah.
During your, I think, sophomore break of college.
I quit college. I wasn't sure what I was doing there. And UVA was really conservative. I mean, it's very different now.
Yeah, when you initially went to UVA, I bet it reminded you of St. Agnes a little bit.
Not quite, because there were men. It was predominantly men still.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't 50-50 either. It was like 30% women. It had been all men. And that's when my dad went there, they used to go down to the girls' schools, roll down to the girls' schools to date. So, which to me just sounded totally bizarre that you wouldn't go to school but it was the old, the majority of non-state funded colleges all throughout were integrated men and women. Not in Virginia. UVA was all men until 4 years before I got there. So it was like pretty bizarre, and still most of the men, the traditional men, they had cars and they would drive down to these other girls' schools every weekend to see, for dances and all this stuff, which to me just sounded absolutely bizarre, anyway. So, so it was a really different kind of place for me. So I left for a while. My grandmother was very much against it, but I took a leave of absence and worked at a plant store in Georgetown. I can't remember the name of it, but Georgetown was really a hopping place then. I don't know if it is now, but that must have been 1975 maybe. And so I worked down there, and I was able to drive my '63 Dart and park it and back, and it was right in Georgetown. And I worked there, and it saved all my money. And so then my friend from high school, Tim Welch, and Jim Rowan, and then a new friend, Jeffrey Pennington, who's a woman, and who was Tim's girlfriend. So, so with the 4 of us, I guess Tim and Jeffrey had bought this huge old bus-like thing. Oh, it was a step van. And so, and they were already down in like Texas, and they said, "Hey, why don't you and come down too?" And so we thought that sounds like fun, and so we did, and we hitchhiked, of course. It's like the fact that I'm even alive now is like some testimony to someone, looking out for me. But so we met them. I guess we crossed the border by bus, and then Tim and Jeffrey picked us up. And so that we were traveling. We went to the end of the Pan American Highway, and we were gone for 3 months, 3.5 months, which was unbelievable. Tim and Jeffrey spoke Spanish, and I picked it up.
And so where specifically did you guys go?
We left, 50 miles south of the border and went all the way to the end of the Pan American Highway.
so you went through Mexico. So you left
Yeah.
you left from approximately like Texas, right?
Yeah.
And you drove through like
We
the
met
eastern
them
side
in
of
Mexico.
Okay.
We
And,
went across the border and met them in Mexico.
and did you drive through the eastern or western side of Mexico?
It's sort
Do
of
you remember?
central.
Central. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you were in like Guatemala and El Salvador and Honduras and Belize and
All over.
all those places.
Yes.
And you made it to Panama at the end, and then
The end of the highway.
wow. And so
Turned around,
wow,
came
that
back.
must have been. And so this was in like mid 70s, right? That must have been
70.
quite an adventure.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 75,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
So that was a whole
Oh,
summer,
and,
I guess, and one semester.
and that was
maybe.
your first big adventure as an adult, as a
Yeah,
outside of America,
yeah.
and not with
Not with parents,
you
yeah.
didn't really have much parental supervision, but like you were like technically an adult. So
Yes.
this first
Yeah.
time you're technically not a minor and doing your
Right.
own thing, and golly, Jeanette's face must have been pale as a ghost when you told her about these adventures.
Yeah, I did not tell her a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
I didn't want her to just pass out, in front of me.
Oh.
And I wrote her
Good.
postcards
Yeah.
and things. Oh, we went to this lovely museum. I mean, I wasn't lying to her,
Look-
but I
Look at
wanted to be
Mary Ann
careful.
hiding something from her grandma. I've never done that to any of my family members.
Good for you.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm
But
just
no,
kidding.
yeah. But Grandma, I didn't want her to worry. And and Jeffrey was just wonderful. I mean, I still know her, and she now works with. She's from Atlanta and still lives in Atlanta and works with Latinos.
And so after this adventure
Mm-hmm.
through Central
Yeah.
America, you went back to UVA.
Yeah.
How was your experience at UVA? What did you study?
Well, it was up and down. I mean, there were things I really liked about it. In general, really good professors. And I was an American Studies major. And it was still it was an excellent school in terms of, scholarship. The social part of it wasn't so good for someone like me. I wasn't, I don't, it was just a whole other world. I just wanted to be, how do I put it? It was just like all about dating, which is not, not what my experience had been. It was like, let's do something together, or go to a movie or what, I don't know. It was just, it was a little difficult.
Did you have any experience with the frats and sororities there?
No.
That wasn't, because I really
I couldn't imagine that I would find anybody.
Yeah.
Certainly not at a fraternity. I mean, they were just all Republicans as far as I could tell, or Democrats who were really Republicans, Dixiecrats.
Why do you think that Jeanette enjoyed her time in a sorority in Kansas in the 1920s, and that you
Good question.
did not enjoy your time
Yeah.
at a potential sorority at UVA in the 1970s? There's a 50-year difference there, which is substantial.
Yeah.
She's your grandma, not yeah.
Not my mother, yeah. Excellent question. I think that when I was listening to you read some of that out loud, it's like that is how those organizations were how you got along in college, and that was how the social life was organized, and it was just what middle class women did. And I think she had a great time, and I think that it was that way almost all over the entire U.S. By the time I got into college, number one, it was traditionally a men's school. So, and that was the structure. I mean, I think I was in the third class that admitted women, fourth maybe, so, and it was cheap. There was no reason not to go there. I got admitted. And in some ways, I just didn't know what I was getting myself into. But it was just, a completely, or not completely, but it was a very hierarchical, male-oriented place when I got there. It was maybe the fourth year that women were were admitted. So, I was part of a radical women's group, not radical, but, very pushy women's group and things like that. And which, was good because we did a lot of things that, attracted, that showed, look, this isn't really fair the way you guys have this set up. And people listened to us,
Do you think that when Jeanette was at Kansas University in the 1920s, there was more structure and less freedom for?
Oh, yeah.
Whereas in with your experience at UVA,
just reflecting the society.
Yeah.
I mean, we could run around and we could walk around in the middle of the night on campus. It wasn't a good thing to do, but you it wasn't against the law or against. Yeah. And it was a whole different social world. I mean, you had to be. The things that my grandmother would do had people watching out for the women. So you'd have, if you went to if they went to a dance party, there'd be people there making sure everything was all right, and then afterwards your parents would pick you up. So it was very structured and very protective of women. And so then for so many women to end up at UVA or any school where there wasn't that kind of structure, and UVA certainly didn't really have it. There was the structure of the fraternities, which I wasn't interested in, and then there was there wasn't really the groups where I met people were sort of political groups.
Oh, here's an idea.
Yeah.
Since when Jeanette was in college,
there
was a women's college and a men's college, and the way in which the men and the women met each other was through the frats and the sororities.
Exactly.
Whereas when university you went to was co-ed, the frats and sorority weren't a necessary social tool to meet other men, to meet the opposite gender, to date.
They were more necessary than you'd think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't really participate in that as much. Yeah. I'd see people, but I didn't really have do a lot of dating in college.
Can you tell me about studying American Studies
at
UVA?
Mm-hmm.
What were you studying? What were you studying? What does American Studies comprise of?
Oh, it's history and literature and looking at things in a more holistic way instead of just saying, okay, this was the literature stuff and here's it was putting that all together and saying this is what was happening, historically, and these are the changes that were going on, and let's look at what happened to the literature there, and let's look politically at the changes. And it was completely integrated in that manner, and I really liked that, and I had really good professors. So that's why I've always liked it.
What time periods did you guys focus on out of the 200 years of American history that there was before the,
Not a lot of early stuff.
So mostly 20th century and late 19th century
Yep.
stuff? Okay.
That's what I remember. That may not be totally true. But
it
sort of the setup.
50 years ago.
Yeah. But again, I have to say that UVA had really good professors and good teachers. I learned a lot about writing. I learned a lot. I feel fortunate to have gone there. However, socially, it was pretty difficult.
Really?
Just because, not only was I a woman who was out of place, but, I was a left-wing radical interested in changing the world and, going to demonstrations and stuff. And that's not what they were about. They were from families who were like, this is Virginia. Yeah. This is what we do here. It was very much more conservative.
So it was like being with a lot of students from St. Stephen's.
Yes. Yeah.
Who were some of your favorite professors?
Oh, I can't remember their names. But my American Studies professors, there were two of them, and they were really great. And I just think that a lot of the English classes that I took, they were really good and helped me with writing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think I got a good education there.
you mentioned that you were a left-wing radical at UVA. Why were you a left-wing radical?
Well, I was sort of raised that way. I
Mhm.
mean, all my friends think of Cindy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying radical with quote with in quotes, kind of.
Just make it melodramatic.
A little, well, or sort of more like,
yeah.
but we were definitely wanted to push things. It was too
Yeah.
slow, so it was a typical youngster thing. Well, young person thing. Let's get going. Let's and make some changes. So, and it struck me if I'd been going to Oberlin or
Mhm.
someplace, everybody was that way. And I thought, oh, that would have been great. But
Yeah.
that's not where I got to go. I got to go to the cheap college that was, fabulous. It had, I don't regret going to UVA. They had great professors, a beautiful campus, but it was basically
Yeah.
a pretty conservative place.
Yeah. You should have went to Berkeley with Cindy.
Yeah. Oh, I could.
Might have been a bit more expensive, but
My dad
but
had.
you had way more lefties there.
Yes, way more lefties. But my dad had 3 kids in college
Yeah,
at the
that's
same
hard.
time.
Yeah.
And how Andy must have gotten help to go to Yale. I didn't want to go to Yale. I mean, it just.
Why not? That would have been a cool experience.
I guess. And I'd visited Yale a couple of times. One of my friends went there, and Karen Anderson, and who I was friends with in high school. But it was too expensive anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know how Andy managed it, or how he must have gotten a lot of support.
Moving on to after college.
Okay.
So you graduated in 1978.
Yep.
And I also see that, according to Jeanette's memoir, you moved to North Carolina in 1981. So I'm curious about the time in between.
Yeah.
So like before you moved to North Carolina, but after you graduated college. There's like a little 3 years there of Marianne that I'm curious about.
I think
Do you
I went
remember-
back to Charlottesville for a while.
Yeah.
That's what I really can't remember. I'd have to look through some of my letters and things to figure that out. I'm not sure what I did in those years. Well, I got an apartment, and I can't remember what job I had. God, this makes me feel like a real dolt.
No, you're fine.
Oh, gosh, when did we go to Central America? Maybe that was because I rented my place out. Maybe. Or when did I go to Alaska? I can't remember that either.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You went to Alaska during that time. You did. Where
Okay.
I think according to Jeanette, you went to Alaska from May to November of 1980, which is before going to North Carolina. Actually, I'm gonna get Jeanette's memoir.
Oh, great.
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 I took a picture of those 4.
Great.
Okay, so according to Jeanette,
I'm sure she's right.
let's see.
This is amazing that I've forgotten so much.
Yeah, so according to Jeanette, after you graduated from the University of Virginia, you worked in Charlottesville as a coordinator of services for senior citizens.
Yep, I did
the
that.
Jefferson Area Board for the Aging.
Yeah, for about a year.
And in 1979, you worked for Cross Associates in Alexandria and as a waitress at the Ramparts restaurant.
Yep. The reason I left the job with social services, it was a senior services, and it really was. I loved that job. There was it Nixon in the? Somebody like Nixon was in the White House.
Reagan.
Maybe it was Reagan.
I know Jimmy Carter was.
Oh, it wasn't Jimmy Carter. I know that.
It was Reagan then.
Yeah, and they cut all the, what would you call it? Social service kind of stuff. So we were defunded, and I just couldn't believe it. I loved my job. I was working with elderly people. I was raised by elderly people. I mean, it was like, this is easy. I know just how to act. I know, and I would help them do things, and we organized stuff and had. There were all these. This was a time when there were new programs coming out that enabled senior citizens, especially, to get different benefits and be eligible for things. And man, I really loved it. And then boom, out of nowhere, with like 1 week notice, or maybe 2 weeks, we were all put off, fired. The money disappeared. I think that was, boy, I was just so upset because I really loved that job, and had thought about, wow, there was a woman there who was getting a master's degree in gerontology, and she was encouraging me to think about doing that you could, get a better job and really learn a lot. And I remember thinking, well, that might make sense to me. Anyway, it was really very sad when that stopped. And I don't know if it was Reagan or who it was, but boom, it was just, overnight. And so I wasn't quite sure what to do next. And I had a boyfriend down there that I was thinking, this is not working out. Yeah. I don't think I'm going to stay here for that. And so I packed up and went back up to Alexandria and stayed with my dad.
And in Alexandria, you worked for Cross Associates,
yeah.
Which is, I assume, some type of legal firm?
No.
Okay.
My dad, one of his good friends was Mr. Cross, and he had an organization that he was trying to expand. They did research stuff, and which I didn't really know how to do at that point. To his, it was pretty fancy research, and then there was some, more ordinary office type stuff that would lead to more. And so it was not far away from where I was living. I got a little apartment after a while, and so I did that for a while, and I liked it, and they hired this guy who really liked me. I liked him, and so for a while we were dating. God, I can't remember his name, but he was older than I was too. But he was saying, yeah, you're good at this research stuff, and he was just very encouraging. And he had a PhD and had worked. He was doing, I can't remember exactly what they were doing, but I think that they were trying to do work for people on the Hill. But it was just too indoors, and it wasn't, I didn't think it was using my brains enough. And I found it interesting, but not really the kind of thing that I wanted to do. If it had been that kind of work, but with something that was more dear to me, I might have stayed around. But then I was thinking of other things to do, and I thought, you know what? I can make more money waitressing than I'm making here. And thought, why don't I do that and figure out what the next step is? Because I wasn't really learning. I just didn't see my future as doing that kind of research, the stuff that he was doing. Yeah. Obviously, I do research now, but it wasn't the kind of stuff that I was interested in. So
that was like around 79, right? You're working for Cross Associates. You're also working as a waitress because Cross Associates doesn't really seem like a real thing, right, to grasp onto. And then you go to Alaska.
Yeah, so I was there, and I thought, and then Bob King came to visit his parents, and so we spent some time together. And I'd known him since he was 6 years old, and I was 6 years old, and we'd kept in touch. And he had moved to Alaska. I mean, and not like to Fairbanks. He lived to, oh God, I can't remember the name of this little tiny town. And he just told me all these stories, and I was transfixed. It was like he knew all these wacko people, and everybody knew him because he ran the radio station, for God's sake. Yeah. And we'd always stayed in touch, and I'd known him since he was 6 years old. This is like another example of Marianne keeps friends around. And he said, you should come up there. It's really fun. You'd like it. It's neat. And during the summer, it's not cold, And I said, great idea. And I thought about it, and I thought, he's right. That's what I should do. And it would just be a great adventure. And he said, I'll help you get a job. I know you can't do radio work. I mean, I, that's a whole other story. It, you know, well, at that point, the radio was like the way to tell. You know, they were in touch with all of the fishing vessels, so it was a really big deal. You know, and they did all sorts of. It was really interesting stuff. Anyway.
I'm sure Grandpa must have thought that was also really interesting.
I guess so. I don't think yeah. Anyway, yeah, he would have. He would have loved to have seen it. I mean, anyway, I really liked the Alaska. And like the first day I was there, I guess I got there and Bob King had to leave the next day to go someplace else. I had flown and then I'd gotten a bus ticket. And then I'd taken the ferry. I mean, it was getting to Alaska takes a lot of time and a lot of work. The ferry is the greatest part. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's really great. So when I got there, he was there for like 2 days, and then he had to leave. And so there I was. And believe me, if you are a young woman in a small Alaska town, everybody knows who you are, who you're visiting, when you got there, everything. And which didn't bother me. But so... and so I was looking for a job, so I got hired by Kodiak Western to work. It was just a what do you call it? A bush pilot service that was. This is just the greatest. So what did I know about small planes? Zero, nothing. And they had small planes. I mean, 6-seaters were about. I think 6-seaters were the smallest, and so they needed someone to like take people's tickets. We're talking take 5 people and so they'd go around and drop people off because it was the only way to get to all these little towns. I don't even know if you call them a town. They have like 200 people in them, maybe during the summer. Then it was in the winter. It was much even smaller. But so what I ended up doing, I worked there for about 6 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. Is I basically did whatever they asked me to do. That included fueling airplanes, which you can imagine how much I knew about that. So they told me exactly how to do it. If you get too many bubbles in there or something, they'll crash. So it's like, let's be really careful here. And everybody was just so friendly, and they were so fun. And then when people, I would sell tickets and take the tickets when they went out to the plane to get on. I mean, it was just so small. And then, I mean, it was. I love little, I don't know, places like that where they have their own culture. And so many folks that were in the plane didn't speak English. They spoke Yupik, which is not an easy language to learn. And if you're not raised Yupik, you don't speak Yupik with few. So one of the things that would happen is that it's illegal to let someone who is drunk get on an airplane, period. They don't have to be flying it, just to be in it. And so what would happen is that a lot of women, some men, would come to Dillingham and spend 3 days drinking because all the places where they lived were dry. They were absolutely not allowed to have, because it was a terrible problem. And so in general, all of those places said dry. You cannot bring liquor here. So they would come to town, to Dillingham, stay with their second cousin, and get drunk. After 3 days, they'd still be drunk. And so then they'd need to get home. Well, some of these places, we only did flights twice a week. So, like, if they couldn't get that flight, they'd have, like, no place to stay. It's cold at night. I mean, so we broke the rules, and so whenever somebody needed to go back, I had to travel with them and make sure they didn't bother the pilot. Because, do you have any idea how small? Have you ever been in a small plane?
Yeah. So you were a bodyguard.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I was they'd throw up on me. Listen, it's really. And they were drunk, but they're like, oh my God, we've got to get this. The people who ran the Kodiak Western Service, they were smart, and they said, we've got to get this person back to her home, and it doesn't matter that she's drunk. she just so long as there's someone to control her. So I would be the person who would sit beside her, and I distinctly remember this. I was sitting right behind. Generally, I'd be sitting behind the pilot, and there was one pilot who had longish blonde hair, and so this woman would, many women would. There wasn't blonde hair where they came from, right? So here's a blonde, and then the blonde who's flying the plane, and they would lean up and start playing with his hair, really getting more and more aggressive and talking in Yupik, of course, because that's their language. So I had no idea what they were saying. So I would have to control them while we tried to fly to their home and then disembark them. So yeah, that was pretty exciting. Yeah. I would say that was, and
that was a change from Cross Associates.
It was definitely a change from Cross Associates. Yeah, it was just wild. And what did I know about these native groups? Nothing. Yeah. I mean, I asked a lot of questions. It's something that interested me, but they're like, oh yeah, most people. Bob King also. I was there for like 3 days, and then he had to go south side. And so he was gone for weeks, and it was just bad timing. And so, I'd come back to this little house, and, it was the upstairs of a little house, and really hard. There's not a lot of housing there, so I knew I was going to be living with him. So it was fun, but, the only thing that those folks did for fun is go out drinking at bars, which, having been a bartender and a waitress, it was not fun for me at all, and I hated that life. They went. The culture of fun there was to go and really most of them would get really drunk, and then they'd have to get up the next morning and do all these jobs, which included flying planes. So yeah. It was pretty exciting. I'd never had I'd never been in that kind of situation. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, and everybody was very friendly to me, because they're like, "Oh, you're new,"
Too friendly, probably.
Well, no, they were pretty nice.
Okay.
And but yeah, to have a different woman come into it. This is a little town. Mm-hmm. I mean, a white woman. There are plenty of. Yeah, I stuck out.
Yeah,
I definitely stuck out. But they were. It was a great place, and if Bob King had stayed there. If he hadn't had to leave, I probably would have stayed the entire time there, because that was Alaska. So, but on the way out, I had met somebody on the ferry, and he had a job at a motel that was halfway between Fairbanks and Anchorage, and he said, why don't you hitchhike with me, and then we can see if you're interested. I was very keen on going to Bob King's at that time, so, which is what I did. But I saw it, and it was, it was right beside the park, which I've also forgotten the name of. Mm-hmm. What's the big park in
Alaska?
Yeah, there's a huge one. But you can hike around. It's great. So when I got up to not to Kotzebue, but to the town where I was staying and where Bob King was. Bob King left, so I was staying in his house, or his rooms, and I liked it, but it was really difficult without him there, and you couldn't hike, which I didn't realize. He had a boat, a plane. I don't know what else. Not a dog sled, but there were plenty of those around. But I didn't, and he wasn't there. And so it's tundra. So when it's summer, it melts.
And you were there during the summertime.
And I was there during the summer. So there was no place to hike. So every day I went from Bob King's house all the way to the airport, which was probably a mile. So I would get out of the house, and then get down on the highway. First car that passed would stop and say, everybody knows everybody else in this town. Everybody. And they say, "Oh, you're Bob King's friend." They all knew who I was. which was, after living in Alexandria and Charlottesville, it's like, it was really great. I just loved it. And Bob King, they'd always say Bob King, because he was everybody knew Bob King.
Yeah.
He was the radio announcer, and he did all kinds of crazy stuff. He would have he had all these amazing sound effects. So one of them was the birthday train. You have a real, and they say, who's on the birthday train today? And they'd name anybody who had sent their birthday in. They say, well, so-and-so of Aleknagik has, it's his happy birthday. Yay! And, it was like, it was a little town, except spread over, this huge space. So it was just fascinating to me. It was so much fun. Anyway, so I did that for a while, and then I got a little bit lonely. And then my friend who I'd left at the other, and I was really wanting to hike around, and looked like it was going to be pretty difficult to do unless I wanted to come back in the winter, which I didn't. So what I did is, I guess my friend Chris called me at Bob King's number and said, we have an opening here, and they wanted me to ask you, because I'd met all the other people there, they wanted me to ask you if you wanted to come for it. And it was, I can't remember what the actual opening was, but I was thinking, you can hike in Denali. It was Denali Park. It's bigger than, oh God. I mean, it's the size of Rhode Island, at least. Seriously, I'm not exaggerating. It is huge. And I mean, it's really an unbelievable place. So I thought, yeah, this sounds good. There was no place for me to go. I didn't have any vehicle. I mean, if I'd waited for Bob King to come back, we could have done things. They say that you're a real Alaskan after one of your friends has been killed in a plane accident. Small plane accident, so I wasn't really keen on that. But so I went, I thought, you know what, it might be better if I went to this place where I could hike, and there's more people, and it's much warmer, comparatively speaking. And so I did that. I took the plane back to Fairbanks, and then I guess I hitchhiked out to the to the place where I was wanting to work. So I didn't know. I had all this experience with kitchen stuff, and I guess they knew that. But they said, well, what do you, we were missing a dishwasher, and I said, oh, okay. I tell you what, I was working as the kitchen manager at my other job, and they were like, really? Mm-hmm. I mean, they were just, okay, great, because the guy who ran the whole fucking place, excuse my French, was sort of trying to also run the kitchen. Disaster. Yeah. Complete disaster. And I knew how to do that and how to make orders. He said, do you know how to make up an order? I said, yeah, I do. And I thought, if I don't, I said, show me what you want, because I thought, it's not like you can just drive down and buy more steaks. You might have to order stuff way in advance. But I liked all the people in the kitchen, and I mean, it was great. It was fun. And so I said, yeah, I'll do this. And they paid me really well, because it's harder to find people who have any kind of experience doing anything. And so I lived in a little tent. Everybody did. The entire, it was only open during the summer, quote unquote. And so everybody had these little tents with raised wooden bottoms. Bears would wander through. I mean, don't keep food in your tent ever. I never got bothered by bears, but because there were a lot of people around. But at any rate, that was really ended up being great fun, because I made some wonderful friends. Julie Rafferty was one of my friends. She was from Seattle and had been to Alaska before, and so she was my hiking partner, and along with some other people. And we would, and it's light constantly. So you can you're okay, it's 9 o'clock, you're all done in the kitchen. You can pack up your stuff and hitchhike up to Denali, go in, find a place to pitch a tent, stay there, and then spend the whole weekend hiking. And it was just amazing. There were, bighorn sheep. There was just all sorts of stuff up there. There were wolves. There were just, it was gorgeous. And and you could hike all day and all night. It would be me and Julie and sometimes somebody else from the place where we worked, and it was just, you'd see all this amazing stuff.
It sounds like quite
like
an adventure.
bighorn sheep,
And it also sounds, I guess, that was your second outing outside of the middle,
yeah,
the Virginia area,
right?
First
right.
time you went south across
right.
Central America and Mexico, and the second time, about 5 years later, you went to the opposite end, went to Alaska.
Right, I guess I did. Completely just luck of the draw.
And so that was I see a significant part of your life. It was really, there are a lot of memories. And then after Alaska, you came back to the DC area.
Yeah.
And I see,
I had sublet my apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was able to get it back and leave all my stuff there.
And I see that you moved to North Carolina in 1981. So right after Alaska.
Yes.
So I'm curious, what brought you to North Carolina?
I think, I'm not sure. I do know, I know what, okay. I can give you some of it. So I decided, Alexandria is fun and my family's there, but it's a hard place to live. The rents are high. And I had friends in Charlottesville, and I thought, why don't I go back to Charlottesville and see maybe if I want to go back to school, and see what's going on. And so I moved down there. I went and found a place to live. And I did have a lot of friends who were still there. And how did this go? Oh, so I started working with Chuck and Nan Purdue, and they were folklorists, and they were also very big into oral history, and I was very interested in that. And I thought, well, that's what this is my next move, is to go and work there with them. Not that they paid me much. And then I was waitressing in order to enable myself to stay there. But it was easy, to make enough. So I would waitress, and then during the day I would work for them. And so I was transcribing. They had a big backlog of interviews that they hadn't transcribed, so I did that. I was organizing them and just doing whatever they wanted. And I really liked that and thought they were doing really good work.
And this was in Charlottesville?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had lots of friends in Charlottesville as well. Yeah. So that was good. And so I did that, and they said, you might want to check out in North Carolina. We know Dan Patterson, and he's, I was pretty sure I wanted to go back to school. At the time, I didn't know how I would do that. But it was very easy because I went down. I talked to Dan Patterson on the phone, and they did a lot of oral history, and they were interested in communities, especially textile communities, as they were just coming to the end of a big grant that they had interviewing people who worked in textiles all in North Carolina, which was all over. I mean, much different from Virginia, or the part of Virginia I was familiar with. So I moved down there and started to work. Well, I applied to college, applied to graduate school, and got in and got money.
You got accepted into Chapel Hill?
Yeah, into I guess it's called the folklore.
The folklore
curriculum
program.
Folklore curriculum, yeah.
In like 1982, 81, something like that.
Yeah, something like.
And so that's what brought you to Durham.
So that's what brought me to Durham, and I can't remember. I guess I was living in Chapel Hill at that time. I hadn't moved over to Durham. Yeah, I was in Chapel Hill. I found a great place. And I had some friends there too from before, and friends from Virginia, from other, well, my friend Patty Bowman, who's still a close friend, she was there for a while because her then husband was finishing up a PhD in statistics or something.
So what was it like moving to North Carolina in your late 20s?
Well, it was easy, because I had friends and I was really, really interested. I just thought, this is what I want to do. I found the right combination of being able to do interviews, document history of ordinary people, which I was particularly interested in, and especially those who, had either worked on farms or had done other work. They had the textile stuff covered, but I was really interested, and so I got hired by the person who was down there. It was a Southern Oral History program, and so I worked part-time with them, and then waitressed in order to do it. And I had a cheap place to live, and I just entered the folklore program, and just really, really liked everybody that I met, and got taken all around so I could see what was what, and I just felt like, oh, this is just definitely where I fit.
Yeah.
And so it felt right.
That must have been great to feel, especially after not feeling right at Cross Associates in Alexandria,
right,
or in Alaska, where that was just like an adventure that wasn't like a long-term move or anything, right?
Right, exactly.
And then going to Charlottesville, and it was nice, but it wasn't really the right place. And then you came to Chapel Hill, to Durham, and you found it.
It was really the right place. Yeah, I was lucky. And
I also see that you met Dana in 1982, and then you guys got married in 1984.
Yeah, how did I meet?
What was it like? Like first, being in your late 20s, new in North Carolina, and meeting Dana, and you guys started a date and everything. How was that experience? 'Cause that's a part, that's a chapter of yours I don't know anything about.
Yeah, well, he had a little brother, has a little brother who was, for some reason, got into the curriculum in folklore, and he's handsome, funny, smart, but I was like, this guy's just not Dana. This is his little brother. Yeah. And he's just not serious about stuff. And then I guess, he was funny and all that, but I never went out with him or anything. He was just in the same classes. And then I guess we had a party or something, and I met Dana through that. And I knew him for a while before we started dating. I guess that's the term, going places together. And he seemed, he played banjo and guitar, and was interested in old time stuff, which was what I was interested in. And he was so much more serious than his brother, which was a good thing. John Loomis was just like, oh, sure, we'll do that. It's like he just wasn't serious. Yeah. And Dana was very serious, and he was in, was it geology? I can't remember.
I know that he graduated in 1977 with a bachelor's, and then, I don't know.
He went to Oberlin.
Yeah. And I'm sure you must have thought that was really cool that he went to Oberlin.
Yeah, I guess I did. I thought, oh yeah, Oberlin, sure. I know all these people. It's an easy place to, it's like, don't throw me into that cotton patch. It was just, I just thought it was good, but some of us had to tough it out in other places. You know what I mean? I guess he did go to Oberlin. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. And then his brother John had gone to Ohio University, which was right in the town where he grew up. That shows you how adventuresome he was. At any rate, so we started dating, and then eventually got married.
What was it like getting married to Dana?
Well,
in 1984.
It seemed like about that time.
You were 29.
Yeah.
Dana.
Was I 29? I guess so.
Yeah. At least according to Jeanette.
Yeah. Oh,
1984.
I'm sure Jeanette had it all down.
What month were you born again?
August.
August. Oh, so you might have been 28. I don't know. I just
But whatever.
yeah,
It's about 29.
Yeah. So what was it like getting married? And
Well, I liked his parents, especially his mother, and always did like his mother so much. Yeah. So I can't remember if we went on some like 3-day little fun. What do you call it when you get married and then you go on a
honeymoon?
honeymoon?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we had like a 3-day honeymoon, and you know, he was working and I was working, so it was sort of hard. But yeah, so we lived in Chapel Hill for a while in my old apartment, and then we decided. Oh, then he finished up his program. He was doing a PhD, I think, and he finished up, and I can't remember what job he had.
He told me that he worked for a while with an oil company.
Oh, he did do that, yeah.
To find oil, I guess. And then
he really hated that, but yeah.
And then he switched to the academic side
of
things.
Yeah, he had, by the time, I mean, I knew him when he was working for the oil people, but that's why he went to school, is to get out of that, because he didn't want to do it. So yeah, and so then he was thinking what else to do. And so he did the PhD. So I guess I was the one working. So I went to the Folklife office.
Yeah.
In Raleigh and worked there. So that's what I was doing. Yeah.
Okay. And I also see that you earned your master's degree in 1985.
Yeah.
A year after.
In folklore.
You were married. You got married and.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it'll get you far, right? But yeah, and this is one of the best ones. I mean, when you say UNC, people go, oh, you know, it's did that, and I was really so glad that I'd ended up here.
And so, what were the early years of marriage like? Before Paul was born,
but
like after marriage, right? Like those first 2-3 years with Dana.
Boy, I was working really hard at the office. There was a lot of travel. You know, we covered the whole state, and I mean, I really loved that work. It was really fun. I wasn't sure where it was going to lead, but I really liked it. I mean, because the sort of the next step up, been there were 2 of us working, and together and doing sort of most of the work out in the state. And then there was the director who was, you know, he was really good, and I still know him, but he saw things sort of differently, and which was okay. But I thought, I don't want that job. I don't want to be the one to direct the office. I like doing the stuff I'm doing. So I did think, well, you know, gee, I'm not sure if this is what is going to be what I need to do for the rest of my life. So. But I liked the job immensely. I was just kind of looking at the future and thinking, not so sure about that. So then I got pregnant with Paul Webb.
Yeah.
And took, I guess, 6 months off, and then went back and worked for a couple more years there before Martin. And
so, what was it like to be pregnant with Paul and then having your first child?
Oh, well, it was, you know, it was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a good baby.
Yeah.
He loved to sleep, you know. And I had friends who had babies. And so yeah, I mean, I remember it as being really fun, and you know, I didn't mind playing housewife, and got to spend time with a lot of friends who also had babies. So you know, it was fun. And then I had to go back. That was not as much fun, jiggling, you know. I can't remember, but we had these, you know, I would take Paul Webb to daycare, which was at just somebody's house, like 3 blocks away, and they had a whole gang of kids there. And it was a great place, and the woman knew more than I'd ever know about. I was really fortunate to find that place. And so I would drop him off at like 8:30, and then Dana, who had already left to go to school or go to UNC, would come back and get him at 5. So it was always this elaborate thing about if there was any change, and you had to make sure it's really a difficult thing. If I had worked if we had both worked, I mean, we both worked in different towns. I was in Raleigh and he was in Chapel Hill. So there was a lot of commuting going. So, it was pretty stressful.
I bet. And also there wasn't really an example because you're the first generation to to work with a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old, because Jeanette wasn't working, Sarah wasn't working, and so this was like new ground in like progressivism, right? Is this to learn how to manage?
Yeah, all these
working
where the father has to be on it.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Although I think I knew almost everybody I knew was doing versions of what we were doing.
Yeah, this was a generational thing.
It was definitely a generational thing. Yeah. Really, and in fact, a woman who I still know, who was my major professor at UNC, later in public health, she and we knew her because later Paul Webb and her kid became good friends, but she was doing the same thing at the same time and had so it was sort of, we were in the forefront of that, but she was a few years older, and in the super forefront, and some places out in Triangle, in the Research Triangle Park, have their own daycare.
Yeah.
But that wasn't where I worked. I mean, it was a different scene. So anyway, so yeah, that was difficult, but we managed it. And then Martin came along, and it was it's a big step. You have 2.
I've heard that while the first child is the hardest, like every child afterwards becomes a little easier.
Paul Webb was really an easy baby.
Yeah.
Loved to sleep, loved to eat, happy to see anybody. I mean, he was really a pretty easy guy.
Yeah.
And Martin was pretty easy too. I mean, when I saw how some of my friends' babies, I was like, ugh. But, he was, and they got along, and, it was really fun to be with them.
Yeah.
But I guess I decided to go back to school then. I can't remember.
Oh, and Jeanette wouldn't know because it was published in 1990. So
yeah.
And this was also the time when you, as well as Ken and other family members, were pestering Jeanette to write the memoir.
Isn't that great?
And you successfully achieved it. So good job. Like seriously, good job
good work.
doing that. And also, I think that in this period in the late 80s, you were probably exposed to a lot of other doctoral students. Right?
Oh yeah.
And so you were exposed to like people around you. Writing large sums of information, and this probably like made you think, Jeanette can do this. And it's just like, thank you for pushing Jeanette to write the memoir.
Yeah, I'm so glad she did. It's just the best. Yeah. So I'm thinking, I guess that I went back to school. I decided to go back to school, and Dana really encouraged me to do that. He said, get your PhD because you'll be, it'll put you in a much better position. And, he was right. And it wasn't that difficult, so I went back.
And so you did that sometime
in public health.
90s, early 90s, mid-90s with Martin and Paul.
Yeah.
Both around as little babies, needing lots of things all the time.
Right.
So that must have been really hard as well. It must have been really...
it was...
Because, it's hard, but also you want life to be hard, right? You want to challenge yourself, and I'm sure that was a big challenge.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get through all the way, and and Dana ended up being the main breadwinner then, but he was very supportive of me going back to school, and so I did and public health was it was pretty, I'm not saying it was easy. There was some stuff that was hard, but it was a real natural fit because it was not everywhere, but at this particular school at that time at UNC, it was very much oriented towards community-based work. Not exclusively. It was also looking at changing major things about the way things go. But there was a lot of emphasis on community-based problem solving and things like that, which I knew communities, and so that made it a real not easy, but it's a good fit for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was good.
Was this around the time where you would go to Wilson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a lot of work in Wilson. Yeah, that was wild.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and that was actually a job that I'd gotten to do that field work.
It's interesting to see the different eras of adulthood, where I see that during the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first I guess, yeah, during the late 70s and the 80s in general, you're just an independent person, just like travel, just like experiencing the world, right?
Yeah.
Like going to college, going to Alaska, going to Central America,
Yeah.
moving to a new city,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then as things should be, then we grow into like more of a stable
Right.
part where you're getting married and you're having kids.
Yeah.
And then we've talked about the 80s, but now we're in the mid to late 90s, and so
Yeah.
and you had two little boys
Yeah.
that were like approximately 10, approximately 8, and you moved houses as well. You moved from
Yeah.
this house to the other house.
Yeah.
What was it like? Just like having two like elementary school age boys and moving to the other house.
It was great. I mean, we had more space. I mean, we just thought that was a neat house. And Dana wanted to build, the garages weren't built. And so he wanted, it's 3 lots down there. And so I guess he got some money from his parents, but things were cheaper then. I mean, this was still not a desirable neighborhood.
Yeah.
But we just loved that old house. And so we bought it. And it was, it had so much more room. But then Dana just left after, I don't know how many years we were in there before he left.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even know. And I just realized, this is crazy, I've got to get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a woman here and her husband who wanted a bigger house. They had 2 kids. She was a doc at Duke. I can't remember what he did. But so we did a switch. And, I mean, they also paid me. Dana had left by that time, which was really a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And was very hard on the boys.
Yeah.
It was really
I bet.
tough for them. So it was just a difficult time. And I guess I was working, God, I can't remember where I was working. I was working at UNC, I'm pretty sure.
Mm.
So then it was really a good thing that we were able to switch, and I came back to this house, which I thought, I love this house. And it was too small for them. So, and she was grandiose. She really wanted a big, and I didn't care.
Yeah.
So, missed the garage, great garage. But so it was fine. I didn't want to leave the street. It wasn't as great then as it is now.
Yeah.
But it was still a pretty good street. So yeah, I've lived on the street since, God, since I moved to Durham.
Yeah.
When did I move to Durham?
I don't know. I didn't write that
19.
down. I know you moved to North Carolina in 1981, but I think it was in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
I don't know when you moved to Durham.
Yeah, I think 84, right around 84.
Okay.
Yeah, because we got married in, I think we got
84.
married in 84. And then we wanted to move to Durham because we couldn't buy anything in Chapel Hill. It's more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And we liked Durham more. And, there were better houses. They were much less expensive. I mean, just Chapel Hill was the place to live. And we were like, we don't care. And just, there were nice houses here for cheap. So, yeah, I'm really glad we moved here. So, and then I don't even know what year Dana left.
Martin was 15, right?
I I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know either. I think it's like, I'm pretty sure Paul was he was 18, he was like a freshman in college when Dana left. I think, again, I really don't know, but I think so.
Okay.
And if that is true, then that means it would be 2006, 2005, 2006.
I think it was definitely 2005 and possibly 2004.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then then I guess do you know when you moved back into this house? It was like shortly after Dana left, like
Oh yeah,
okay.
Very shortly.
Okay.
You know.
And then Martin turned 18 in what, in 2000 and in 2009, I guess. Yeah, 2009. And I'm sure Martin was like kind of like out of the house doing his own thing like before he turned 18, I think, right?
Somewhat,
I think,
yeah.
Didn't he go to Reno or something for like a year?
Yeah, and that was a huge mistake.
And then he came back here for a bit, and then he did his own thing. I was like, what I'm getting at is that I think at around 2009, 2010 or so, like both Martin and Paul were like out in the world being like adults doing their thing.
Yeah.
And so this is like and so you were just like in here with your like own social group here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very different not to have them here. I really wished that. I mean, I missed them.
Yeah.
Terribly. Yeah, and I think, gosh, yeah, that was difficult when I remember when Dana, decided to have Paul Webb live with him in Reno, and I was really concerned about that because I didn't think that he would supervise him closely enough. Sure enough, he didn't.
Yeah.
And and so I guess he started to take Paul Webb to get to some therapy, and so I ended up talking to that therapist a lot about my concerns, and she was great. And I remember thinking, okay, and she kept saying, he's going to be okay. Don't worry, he's going to be okay. But she just said, your ex-husband is absolutely not with it.
Yeah.
He's not paying attention. And I thought, God damn it, I knew that. I mean, that was my real reason. It's like, I don't want you to go out there because I knew Dana wasn't equipped.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
He just wasn't. So Paul Webb lived through it.
Yeah.
But that was a really difficult time for me because I just thought, oh, this is going to be bad.
I'm sure going to the beach during the summertime with and seeing Ken, there's Keith, or Ken as well, was like a nice break from all of the hectic.
Yeah, I wish we still did that.
Yeah, and and so what
I'm not
so
sure.
you guys all went to the beach during like the 90s and 2000s, right?
Yeah.
As from when Paul and Martin were
they loved
from
it.
like age 3 to age 18, basically, right?
Yeah, I really loved those times. It was a great family time, and Grandma loved it too.
Oh yeah,
Jeanette and Tom would come sometimes.
Yeah.
Tom came several times. I can't remember. I can't remember Ken ever coming.
Really?
Maybe. Oh no, maybe I think he did.
Yeah.
Because Leslie and I are tight.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would do a lot of stuff together and watch the kids together and stuff like that. So yeah, I really loved that, and I'm really sorry that we don't all do that again. I would do it in a heartbeat.
We can.
But I mean, I
start
can't.
again in 5 years. Thing is, there needs to be children. There needs to be a new generation.
Yeah, there does.
We need a little bit of time for like the next generation to be born.
Yeah, so I guess I could figure out I don't know. I've got to get a job, but I'm not really in a position to rent a house.
Yeah.
Anymore, and so I would have to figure out a way to have Paul Webb and maybe Martin.
Yes, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, they could figure it out, and that would just be great fun. So it could be Paul Webb and his wife, and Martin and his wife.
But cool. So we've gone through.
Yeah, we've done a lot.
We've gone through the 60s, the 70s, right? Okay, wait. So this is the 60s. At your elementary school, your middle school, St. Agnes, and then Jeb Stewart.
Yeah.
Then we went to You go into UVA. You taking your trip
Yeah.
to Mexico and Central America,
Mm-hmm.
going back to UVA, then your trip to Alaska,
Yeah.
then back to Alexandria, Charlotte, Durham.
Yeah, I think there's
a whole family life.
I do remember one thing that I sort of went through my brain, but
Mhm.
We lived in Holland for a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I've not included
When
that.
did that happen? Or like approximately, was Paul
Yeah.
and Martin there?
Yeah.
They were both there?
Yeah.
Okay, oh yeah, I think I remember Martin talking about how he was like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or something.
5, 6.
That means like that was like late 90s.
Yeah, and it was a great time. I mean, it didn't advance my career at all, but it was great to be over there. And we lived in this great little village, and we went all over, and Dana and I were still getting along well. So we would go every weekend. We'd go someplace different, and the village was just wonderful. And most people spoke English, not everybody, but it was it was really fun. We had a neat little house, and the kids made friends immediately.
Yeah.
And it was Holland is a great place to be a kid because
Oh yeah.
it's just so kid oriented and so
Yeah.
everybody looks after the kids. It's not like, oh, that's somebody else's kid like we do here. It's like, no, and it was a little town, and I just loved it, and I made so many friends there, and it was just really a fun place to go.
Yeah.
Wageningen, I think was the name of it, and it really was so much fun.
What was it?
Wageningen. Wageningen.
How do you know? How would I spell it?
Don't know. Dutch is beyond me. It's really.
It's a weird language.
It's kind of weird. It's prettier than German, though, I think.
Yeah, no.
It's South Central. I mean, we could look at a map, but.
Anyways.
But it was really fun, and it was right outside of a larger town, so that we could go and get things and do things in this larger town, and that was where Dana worked.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a great place to be. So I guess we spent 6 months there. Maybe the kids went to school there. They spoke Dutch, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. But everybody pretty much spoke English to me. So that's if you want it. They teach English in the schools, but also it's the lingua franca. For a lot of those areas, especially, the only people who speak Dutch are the Dutch. So once you leave Holland...
Same with the Danes.
Yeah. Once you leave Holland, you're going to have to speak English or French or whatever.
Yeah.
So we were lucky in that way. And I loved it. It was just a wonderful little town. It was great. I don't know if I've ever put together photos of it, but it was really nice. And the kids remember it a bit. They loved it because it was a very safe place for kids. You could just as a culture, they're very pro-child. Yeah. That's and we would go places on the weekends, and we really had a great time there.
Didn't you guys live in Mexico for a while as well?
Yeah, we lived in Mexico too. That's right.
Was that before or after the Netherlands?
I think that was before the Netherlands because I think the kids were little. Yeah, and we were in Cuernavaca. Cuernavaca. It's south of Mexico City. It's a very nice. Everybody says, "Oh, Cuernavaca, it's a wonderful place." I'd forgotten about that. And I had friends come to visit me there. Patty visited me in Holland. It was great. Your thing up there is that doing the right thing? No, over there it's click.
Oh yeah, that's for the cats. 1 second.
Oh, it's for the cats. So the cats can tell time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a. Wait, 1 second.
Sure.
Yep. Cool. Well, I think we went through everything. I mean, not everything.
Yeah,
But, you
pretty
know,
much.
We did a nice solid run.
We did. It's a very abbreviated, my high school stuff. I didn't
Yeah.
want to get too far. But my grandmother was really just so helpful to me
Mhm.
during that whole period, because I would call her and just say, "Oh, I can't do all this," you know.
Yeah, I bet.
And it was just really tough.
I mean, it was a
for
lot of
me.
responsibility.
It was a lot
for
of
you.
responsibility. You know, we'd go to the grocery store. We, you know, it was just, it was a lot of work. And Andy wasn't made to do anything, you know, nothing.
Yeah.
And he just stay in his room. So great, okay.
Mm.
Yeah. So I felt like it was. I mean, I could have friends over. I just felt like, you know, okay, if this is the way you want to play it, I'm going to do whatever I want. You know, not in a nasty way. I just sort of thought, if you want me to run this, I'll run it. I just, you know,
Yeah.
and took care of the, you know, feeding everybody, and whether, you know, my dad was going out with women then.
Yeah.
Thank God, you know, he started to date, and so often he didn't come home for dinner. He was taking somebody out for dinner, which was, you know, fine. But maybe in the beginning of high school, he usually did come home. But things were changing. You know, he was looking for another partner, and good for him. It's just too bad he got Carolyn.
But in Jeanette's memoir, so you and Jane and Jeanette were rooting for their marriage. For their
Well,
wedding.
yeah, at first I thought it would be okay.
I'm gonna stop the recording.
Yeah.
I think,